Welcome to Discover Barnstable, the official podcast of the town of Barnstable, a podcast where you can meet the people who steward the programs and services that connect us to our quality of life here in the town of Barnstable. We invite you to join the conversation as we navigate municipal government and our community pathways to help you discover Barnstable. I'm Sarah Beal Fletcher, and on this episode of Discover Barnstable, we are joined by Cape Cod Gateway Airport Manager, Katie Servis. Katie, thanks so much for joining us. In 2018, Katie became the first female airport manager at Cape Cod Gateway Airport since the airport's inception in 1928. She employs 25 full-time staff members in 3 different departments: airport operations, airport maintenance, and airport administration, that manage over 639 acres of runways, taxiways, parking lots, structures, and systems. She manages over 15 on-call airport professional firms that assist in the operations, maintenance, and development of the airport, and she coordinates and works with over 65 on-airport businesses and tenants that employ over 1,700 in staff. Wow, Katie.
Yeah,
that's a lot.
It is a lot.
So let's start with, what type of airport is the Cape Cod Gateway Airport? Because in going over the information that you sent, I didn't realize that there were different types of airports. You just think of an airport as an airport, but then if you think about it, the Marston's Mills Airfield and the Cape Cod Gateway Airport are very different. So clearly there are differences in airports.
Correct. It's a good question. When you think of airports, oftentimes the general public will think of commercial service. So when they think or when they look at a particular airport, they don't think of the other types of activities that take place. So the Cape Cod Gateway Airport is considered a non-hub primary airport. It's a commercial service airport, but the vast majority of our operations are general aviation. General aviation is anything other than military and commercial flights. So the vast majority of our operations, about 52%, are general aviation operations that occur at the airport. What people in the general public do not realize is that there's 3,300 airports that are open to the general public in the United States. That's a lot of airports.
It is, yeah.
But the vast majority of those airports are not commercial. Only 11% of those airports are commercial service airports. That's about 383 airports. Cape Cod Gateway Airport is one of those airports. We serve a vital role within the national transportation system by providing commercial service, but that is not our highest activity at the airport. General aviation is a mixture of small single-engine aircraft where people are learning to fly, up to corporate type and business type aircraft. So it's a really good mix of different types of activity on the airport. And 89% of the airports in the United States are just that, where they have a very healthy mix where it's not all commercial. We just happen to be one of the airports that does have a small portion of commercial activity.
Can you give an example of what a commercial airport would be for people? It's like, similar to Cape Cod Gateway, like, is Logan considered a commercial airport?
So Logan Airport is a commercial airport. It is a large hub commercial airport, whereas we're a non-hub or non-primary airport. An example of an airport like ours would be Worcester Airport, would be very similar to Cape Cod Gateway Airport.
Great. And you do have a lot of private. I'm just trying to think of, like, I think of the airport sometimes as like, a marina. Do you have like slips where people can fly in and land and come in for the day and then fly out if they own their own personal aircraft? Does that happen at the Cape Cod Gateway Airport?
Right, that happens oftentimes in the summer mostly. We have a lot of activity that is private ownership or corporate ownership, where they come in, they have a home that's in the area, they come in, they park their aircraft for a weekend or a week, and then they depart. So they're not based here, but they have activity here. We also have year-round activities such as Boston Med Flight that comes into the airport probably 3 to 4 times a week to respond to any emergencies that occur. We have smaller privately owned aircraft that are in our hangars that are single engine or multi-engine, small multi-engine aircraft that are privately owned. Some are even corporately owned. So if you think of a facility like Marine Lumber, Marine Lumber has a fleet of aircraft that they use to transition their employees to and from the airport to Nantucket to work.
That was going to be my next question is, you have a lot of people that go from Hyannis out to Martha's Vineyard, Nantucket through the Cape Cod Gateway Airport for work. So I know that's a big portion of, who's flying out of there.
That's a huge portion of the activity at the airport. I think when you think about the economics of this airport, you think about what needs to happen beyond us. So when you head over to Nantucket or the Vineyard, you have a lot of contractors that are flying out of Cape Cod Gateway Airport in the morning, doing what they need to do on the islands, and then coming back late afternoon. That's a constant. That happens all the time. There's usually flights that are full with contractors in the morning, about 6:30 in the morning departing, coming back about 4:30, 5 o'clock. That's a daily occurrence. Wow. So there's a lot of activity that's commerce that people just don't think about as a general course of action. Many in the general public think of commercial service as being the only type of activity that would occur at an airport.
Right.
And that's not the case. It's not always American Airlines, JetBlue, or Cape Air. It's Gull Air that brings those contractors over. It's the private aircraft that come and go coming into Atlantic or to Griffin Avionics. It's the aircraft that are coming to get their aircraft worked on at Griffin Avionics. Griffin has been there for almost 40 years. And they have people that fly to them and have the expertise that people are looking for aircraft avionics throughout New England. So there's aircraft that are coming in from Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire, Rhode Island that seek the opportunity to have their aircraft worked on by Griffin Avionics. We have others that Loft Aviation is a new entrant to the airport. Aloft Aviation has flight instruction. They have helicopter tours that they give. So there's a lot of different types of activity that's outside of American Airlines or JetBlue,
right.
That's occurring at the airport.
And I think that's something that, people don't understand is they see, the airport and they think, oh, it's just, people commercially flying. But like we just discussed, that's clearly not the majority of what's going on at the airport. Although I will say I have flown commercially out of Cape Cod Gateway Airport. My mother-in-law flies in the summertime. It's amazing. I love it. It makes things so much easier. We were talking about her coming out and we were like, oh, you should look at American Airlines. They're coming in now. So see if any of those flights make me work better for you. And that's what she's doing. She's
great.
Going Savannah to DC and then DC
That's fantastic.
to Hyannis. So.
That's fantastic. I love hearing that.
Yeah.
And we've actually, since the announcement of American Airlines, it seems that we've opened up the door for people who are American Airlines centric. That's their airline. Mm-hmm. And I've had probably about 10 emails thus far of people asking different questions about American and where they operate and different information about the airport. So people are using the service. In fact, I had one woman about 2 weeks ago. She said that she typically flies from Philadelphia to Boston or Philadelphia to Providence, and then she drives to the Cape. She was so excited about American Airlines because now she was flying to DC and then taking the DC flight right into the Cape, and she's here for 2 weeks, which that's the whole purpose of it. Get here, ease of getting here, ease of getting out of the Cape, and having an opportunity to do that without having to drive to Boston or Providence.
Yeah, it's really nice to not have to drive up to Boston to go pick up my mother-in-law.
There you go.
It's really great. It's so helpful. And she's flown all the other airlines that go in and out of there too. She's flown Cape Air. She's always like, yeah, whatever I can do to not have you guys have to drive up to Boston to come get me or hire a car service because it's just so much easier.
It is a lot easier. In fact, I was looking at tickets to London, and I wanted to see what the difference in price would be if I flew out of Hyannis versus Boston. And I just wanted to make sure, is it realistic? Can people afford this? And in looking at the travel time going up to Boston, the price that you would have to pay for your vehicle to park there for a week, and then just the time in general, you take all those factors into play, it was $86 cheaper for me to fly out of Hyannis, park my car for a week in Hyannis, fly out of Hyannis, go to DC, and from DC to London. $86 cheaper. Why wouldn't you do it?
Right. makes so much more sense.
Exactly.
And that's great because there's plenty of parking at the Cape Cod Gateway Airport. So, I mean, that's
right.
You don't have to worry about that.
No, I mean, you can park your vehicle, $12 a day, park your vehicle and walk into the terminal in about 5 minutes and then check in and go through security. It's easy peasy. It's really quite simple to get into the airport and your final destination, wherever it may be.
Mm-hmm. That's great.
Yeah.
Yeah. So much better than going to a large airport.
I
That's for
agree.
sure.
I agree. It's convenience.
It is. It is. So, people should definitely see that as an option. I also want to talk about, we've talked about American Airlines. JetBlue has been there, I think, what is it, 10 years now?
11 years.
11 years. JetBlue has been there. And then what are some of the other air services that fly out of there that people can take advantage of if they're looking?
Right. So American Airlines obviously started on June 5th. They fly to LaGuardia. They also are flying to DCA. Those are two options. JFK can be accessed through JetBlue's flights. Cape Air, I was really so excited about Cape Air's schedule this year because they really, they had a pilot shortage that they were dealing with. And this summer, their schedule is so robust, and I was so happy to see that. They have something like 12 or 15 flights daily that go over to Nantucket. They have daily flights, I want to say this probably be about 10, might be less than daily, over to the Vineyard. They have Westchester, New York that you can go to. They have Boston flights, and the Boston flights are going like gangbusters. People are getting on those Boston flights, making further connections beyond Boston, or just going to Boston for the weekend. Mm-hmm. So it's really nice to see that we have a robust schedule, especially for the season. We know that JetBlue and American Airlines, after Labor Day, they will cease their seasonal operations. I'm hoping that we can extend that to less than daily at some point in time so that we can offer people better options to go to Florida, say, in the winter.
Right. That would be wonderful. Have you noticed an issue with the pilot shortage? Because I know across the board, a lot of different what's the word I'm looking for? Different industries are having shortage with of hiring people. But have you had an issue with that at the airport?
We did, and I'll say that over the past 2 years, I think Cape Air struggled with that, just like other airlines did. The problem that Cape Air was having is, there were a lot of bonuses being offered by the major airlines to signing bonuses for pilots. Cape Air was doing that as well, but they were competing with those larger airlines that oftentimes many of the pilots want to eventually be working for. Right. So there was some competition there. Cape Air worked really hard on getting their numbers increased for the number of pilots. They introduced, it's called Gray Gulls. It's older pilots that can't fly for the majors anymore, but that want to still fly a line. They can fly for Cape Air. So that has increased their numbers, which is fantastic. The pilot shortage, I think we're starting to come out of it a little bit. Nationwide, we're seeing, a transition. I think that has helped Cape Air, that has helped JetBlue and others really move into being able to provide better service to our customers. The other thing that we cannot forget is back in the 90s, airlines started doing what we call upgauging, where they started to increase the size of their aircraft. So what they used to fly, maybe a 45-passenger aircraft, they used to do 2 flights to DC, just giving you an example. Now they're doing it in 1 aircraft that carries 100 people. So that has helped reduce the need for pilots because they're taking 2 aircraft off of their fleet mix and putting it into 1 aircraft. That has also caused airports to look at their infrastructure because now, since the 90s, a lot of airlines are doing this upgauging. In fact, last year I went to a conference where the major airlines were talking about getting rid of their regional smaller aircraft and moving into those larger aircraft fleets. And to be honest with you, almost all major airlines have done it. United has a regional aircraft that they still use, Delta to a point. But for the most part, everybody's upgauging. So it has required airports to look at their facilities and to say, can we accommodate the aircraft of today that are utilizing our facilities?
Yeah, larger aircraft means, different types of runways and weight limits and things like that.
That's correct. That's correct. So when we look at Cape Cod Gateway Airport, of the commercial service airports in the region, we have the shortest runways. So we have shorter runways than Nantucket, shorter runways than the Vineyard. So we have not caught up to what the industry is doing, which is why we're looking at a runway extension. Because of this upgauging, it's been happening for quite some time, and we want to be able to accommodate the aircraft that actually fly here today that have already upgraded, but still need that longer length to, say, go to Florida nonstop.
Right. So it kind of goes into my next question, which is, you just finished your 5-year strategic plan. What are the plans for the future? And I know part of that is extending runways, right?
Right, exactly. So like you said, we just finished our master plan. It was completed in 2022, May of 2022. We're going through the environmental assessment right now for that. And that has looked at our infrastructure to say, what are your needs for the future? What do you need to be, to meet the Federal Aviation Administration's standards in design for an airport, and what do you need to meet the standards of what's happening in the industry? So out of that master plan, it identified some modifications that we do need to make to our taxiways to meet federal standards, and also to meet runway length standards for the existing fleet of aircraft that are using our airport today. So that's a mix of those general aviation, business type, corporate type aircraft that are using the airport on a regular basis. Like I said, 52% of our activity is through those types of aircraft. And then for the commercial fleet, I mean, a lot of people think, you're doing this for JetBlue. No, that's not the case. We're doing this for the aircraft that are already here. As a byproduct, it will help JetBlue, especially when they transition to their A220 aircraft, which is a larger aircraft, 120 passengers, versus the E190 aircraft that they're using now with 100 passengers. So it helps them, yes, but they are still the aircraft that does not necessarily need the runway length. It's some of those corporate aircraft that do need their length that are already using the airport.
Right. That's great. I think planning for the future is important. I know that there's so many things that we could talk about, but we are running out of time. So don't worry, we'll have you back. We're just going to end with our bonus question for you right now. What is your favorite season?
I would say that my favorite season, can I have two?
You can have two.
Spring and fall.
Yeah.
I am not a person that would ever move down to Florida because I cannot handle the heat.
Same.
So spring and fall are my favorite times. Spring and fall, my favorite times on Cape Cod as well. My husband and I do try to do a lot of camping and those during that kind of shoulder season when we can. But it's just the crowds are a little bit less on the Cape, so it's nice. You can go for lots of hikes along the beaches. You can bring your dogs onto the beaches, which is great. Yeah. But I would have to say spring and fall are my favorite.
Yes, I agree. Katie, thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thank you for spending time with us and listening to Discover Barnstable, the official podcast of the town of Barnstable. We hope you found a new understanding of how your municipal government works for you and our community. Be sure to drop us a line at podcast@town.barnstable.ma.us and let us know what you would like to learn next. Until next time, go Discover Barnstable.